Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Banners on the Wall. Anthony Russell here, and welcome back to a new video version in our Hockey Stories series, where we tell stories from across the wonderful and wacky world that is ice hockey. And we say on the What's Current stream on Wednesday nights, we go from the 19th century to the present day. We go into war, behind the Iron Curtain, and beyond. But we're very much in the now, in the present day with this one, because when I was made aware of some of the stuff that this chap is doing, I wanted to have a chat with him, because we put hockey players sometimes on a bit of a pedestal, and that's kind of all they are. But this chap is doing some really fascinating things away from the ice, and therefore I figured having a chat with him would be prescient and really interesting. So delighted to be joined on the line by Nottingham Panthers, Jordan Kelsall. Jordan, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me this evening.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
We'd be remiss, and we will touch on it because, of course, Banners on the Wall, a website that was kind of born out of the old EPL and the National Division. You, of course, did spend some time at the Swindon Wildcats, and Aaron Nell has just announced that he will finally call time. Some thoughts and some memories on what has been a fascinatingly impressive career.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time in Swindon. Obviously, Aaron was a big part of that when I was down there, not only as a player, but as a coach too. He's obviously had an incredible career down there, and not just in Swindon, but for GB and Sheffield and Coventry as well. But yeah, I saw that. I think it was last week that went out, or maybe the week before, and I guess want to congratulate him on an amazing career, and he's going to continue his work down there, I'm sure, and bringing new players through. I keep seeing that they've got a lot of younger guys coming through, which is just amazing to see. And without that opportunity that I had, I probably wouldn't have been able to do what I've done since then. So I'm obviously extremely grateful for that, and I want to thank him too. But yeah, no, amazing career for sure.
A few elite league players who joined the Wildcats roster, of course, over the off season. Not you in the immediacy, of course. Been an okay week. Obviously, we're speaking into the last week of October. We're just under a week removed from the Panthers just about getting over the line in the Challenge Cup and getting into the elimination game. Less of a good weekend, of course. That loss to Cardiff. I'd say it's been a bit of an up and down start to the season, but actually it kind of feels like no club really feels like they've really got themselves on a very firm footing so far in the Elite League. People are losing games that people would necessarily think they should win. It speaks to the competitive nature of the league this season, but Nottingham it feels like you've had more ups than downs to start with compared to some teams. Consistency is obviously what you guys are going to be searching for coming forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, definitely an up and down start. I think on the most part, we've started pretty well. But like you said, no one's really kind of taking the league, by storm at the moment. I think that's probably more frustrating on our end, is because, we feel like if we string some results together, we can really be pushing, on the upper end of the table. So I think for us, we just need to keep, playing the way we can for the entirety of games and see where we are at the end of them, hopefully on the winning side. But we're not going to win them all at the end of the day. So I think ultimately just trying, like I said, get to a complete performance as we can. And I think if we consistently do that over the entire season, we should be very competitive. But the league, in general, on the whole, is really competitive this year, and you keep seeing what you think are upset results, but maybe they're not this year. You just never know. So we just need to keep trying to be as consistent as we can.
I think there's something to be said, given the nature of what we're going to talk about calling the form book a little bit and looking at previous and past results as to why some people might call them upsets. Is there anything or any one team around the league that's really surprising you to start the league this year?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously we played Cardiff at the start of the year and lost to them. I think the first game we played them, and then we went down there and beat them 5-0, which people would look at that and think they're quite odd results. But I think that kind of epitomizes the league so far, and especially in the Challenge Cup, where we lost at home to Manchester, and then like I said, have beaten Cardiff on the road, and you've kind of seen some funny results in that. We lost in Guildford, but then went there the following Wednesday and won, I think 5-0 or 6-1 or something like that. So there's so many kind of funny results at the moment. It's hard to kind of pinpoint one team. We haven't played everybody yet either. So I think this weekend we've got obviously Belfast on Friday. So it'll be good to see them and see where we are against them. Obviously being, the league champions last year. So I'll just keep building.
Yes, Belfast on Friday. So hopefully no Halloween horrors at the NIC for you and the boys, and then Coventry on Saturday. Obviously here to kind of talk, like I say, some more bits and pieces away from the ice, because you have interest and a focus in financial markets and kind of business bits and pieces. For people unaware, you also work off the ice with the Panthers doing business development. Looking more at some of the stuff you do for the Panthers to start with, because I've asked the question before a few times whenever I've interviewed people, because the term general manager within British hockey can kind of mean everything or nothing all at once. What does business development actually mean in this context, please, Jordan?
Yeah, so my job is quite straightforward in the sense of how it's cut down. The first bit is commercial partnerships and relationships. So I get to go out and, basically network with people and bring them on board with us in a commercial sense. And then the other part of my job is growing what is called our community program. So that focuses on local organizations. It might be schools, it might be sports teams, charities, you name it. And we give them the opportunity to come down to our games on like a special program that we do, and we help fundraise for them. So every time they come down to our games, we've been donating a certain amount back to their clubs. So one example last year was a local football team joined the program, and the council stopped cutting their football pitch. So by joining the program, they were able to fundraise with us, and I think they raised about £270, which went towards being able to cut their pitches and stuff like that. So community program has been amazing, because we're trying to grow the sport, obviously in the country in general, but specifically in Nottingham. So we've seen a lot of people that have never really watched ice hockey or don't really know anything about the sport come down and get involved, which has been great. And then, like I said, on the commercial opportunity side, it's been kind of an amazing experience to see that side of things. I think when you're a player, you only tend to see kind of the bits you want to see, whereas when you get to work on both sides, you see kind of the full picture of how the operation works and stuff like that. So it's been really good. I'm really enjoying it, and it's nice to combine the two.
I suppose the question that kind of jumps to me is, from someone who has a background in working in the NHS, there's a lot of talk about work-life balance. How hard is it to achieve that balance for you as an individual? Because being a professional athlete is a very, very demanding job that takes a lot of time. It's not just 60 minutes of playing ice hockey, once or twice a weekend. It's not just training a couple of times a week. There is a lifestyle that comes with your chosen profession. How hard is it? Because sometimes for some people, the blurring of those lines would be a really easy thing to manage. Is it an easy thing for you to manage? How do you kind of separate those things out? Because ultimately, at some point, you've got to have some downtime. You've got to, whether it's, I mean, hockey players seem to have this obsession with golf that I never understand, or whether it's Xbox or not. How do you manage to do that?
Yeah, like you said, it can be kind of grey area, for some people, but we have a great team around us at the Panthers, whether that be obviously on the playing side, but also in the on the commercial side. There is a good number of people in the back office that allow me to do what I need to do during the week, obviously take on some of that burden from me, and I think with the business side of the job that I have, a lot of that is done in the summer, and obviously the summer months that we're trying to onboard new partners or new projects that we're undertaking, and then a lot of that kind of subsides when we get to the season, because if we've done a good job, we'll have obviously everything in place at the start of the year for me to just focus on being a hockey player, because that is number one for me at the end of the day. everyone is aware of that. Everyone's on the same page with that. So, you know, that's been kind of the notion from day one, to be completely honest, is that, you know, I'm here to play hockey first. The business side does come second. But, you know, like always, you got to find a balance. And some days when probably other people are having a complete off day, I might be just doing a bit here and a bit there, but it's never too taxing on the body. And I do get what I need away from the rink to obviously allow me to recover and, you know, be the best player I can be. So just finding the right balance, as with everything.
It's as the father of a child in primary school, I'll find it eventually, I swear. On a the thing that obviously in some circumstances like that, it's quite a tangible way to kind of find results. Obviously, a lot of people will go to work and they'll feel like they're kind of spinning their wheels a little bit, working in sort of, you know, what is effectively, you know, sort of, you know, business commercial bits and pieces, getting, as you say, getting sponsors into the clubs. It must be nice in some ways to be able to have a really tangible result to what you do, and actually you get that in sport because that big horrible scoreboard above you will tell you whether you've won or lost, irrespective. But also on that, working for the club in that sense, you actually get to see the sort of the output of your work, and then obviously sort of, you know, the cycle kind of keeps going. That's got to be relatively good from a motivational standpoint, without diving too far into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or anything like that.
Yeah, it is, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're a team and we're all working towards, you know, one big objective. Like I said earlier, whether that's on the ice for winning games or, you know, in the summer, we're ultimately working on beating last year's performance as a club and the commercial side. So you're always kind of, you know, striving to be better. And I guess to have a target, you can measure it, and it's you know, very easy to see how you're doing. What I would say as well, there are a lot of things that obviously aren't financially motivated, you know, in terms of bringing money in. There are a lot of other things that we do to, you know, increase the, you know, fan experience and stuff like that. It isn't just purely, you know, bringing money to the table for the club. It's, you know, trying to make the experience of coming to the arena, you know, greater every single game. We do a lot of activations during the game that, you know, I'm sure our fans, you know, are aware of, and power breaks and things like that, that we're trying to obviously make it more of a spectacle and a show than just 3 20-minute periods of hockey, and ultimately trying to make it a family friendly environment as well. You know, you want to have families and you know, them feel comfortable bringing their children down and having a good time. And when they leave, no matter the result, our idea is that, oh, we had actually had a really good time, and we probably go again because we feel like value for money. So there's a lot of kind of initiatives that we're trying to do that aren't specifically about just bringing money in, that do take a lot of our time. It's finding the balance between them all, like I said earlier. So, but it is good to measure, like you, to answer your question, measure your job, and you know, that is about, have we met our target or not.
How surreal is it that not only do you, that, you know, somewhere back in the past there is, you know, little, you know, 12, 11, 13-year-old Jordan Kelsall who was a Nottingham junior. How surreal is it that you are a Nottingham Panther at 26?
It is like surreal, honestly, because you never, people always ask me that, like, how does it feel? And I always say, like, I never knew I was going to make it till my first day here, and I made it. You never think, you know, oh yeah, you're destined on this path to play in Nottingham or anything like that. You know, in sport, you know how it is. It's like, you know, you're one phone call away from a contract or you're not, and you never know till that phone call kind of comes in. So to have the opportunity to play in Nottingham, which is obviously where I'm from, I don't take it for granted, that's for sure. And it has taken you know, a lot to get here. I know that, and obviously all my family know what it's taken to get here, but I definitely wouldn't change it for the world. And I am very lucky to play Nottingham in front of my family every week. I definitely don't take that lightly.
So we will move then slightly into some of the other bits and pieces, and we will do the disclaimer bit right here. None of this is financial advice. I'm the son of a bank manager. and I can just about figure out how much money's in my stocks and shares ISA. And Jordan is not a financial advisor either, but we are going to talk about the fact that Jordan Kelsall, financial YouTuber, or at least aspiring financial YouTuber.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't call it YouTuber. Basically, I just decided it would be a good idea to kind of record a few bits and pieces of what I'm doing kind of in the background in my own time. Like you said, I'm not a regulated financial advisor or anything like that. It's purely just kind of my thoughts and my take on everything, I guess. I did I went to Nottingham University and did economics, finance, and banking undergraduate degree. So graduated in 2023, and kind of always had in the background kind of an eye on, like you said, financial markets and investments and things like that. And I'm just kind of learning, obviously, in my own time when I have it, and putting in a lot of work to try and teach myself, through success and failure, I guess. And I thought it would be a good idea to just kind of put something out online to make people aware of that. And, hopefully some people might take a few things from it. And if they don't, that's absolutely fine too. But yeah, not a YouTuber though, nowhere close.
You can't get away from it now. You have two videos, and one of them's nearly an hour long, Jordan.
Yeah.
You talked in the first video you put up actually about picking up William O'Neill's How to Make Money in Stocks, which for people not really aware is one of kind of the I want to say like sort of the gateway, a good starting point for people who are interested in these kind of things. But I suppose the question for me kind of comes before that. What gets you to that point where you're thinking to yourself, I want to have a look at this?
I think it's just the sheer amount of time I had when I was 17, 18 in my first year in Nottingham, because I'd finished my A levels at 17 and 18 in Swindon, and I moved back up here. And the agreement was that I would practice in Nottingham during the week, and then on a Friday go down and play for Aaron in Swindon at the weekend, and we'd practice on a Friday and play Saturday, Sunday. So kind of the middle of the week, Monday through to Thursday, you could say. If I wasn't here with the Panthers, it was kind of like quite a lot of, what I thought was off time then, because I was used to being in education, like however many hours a day it is. And then all of a sudden I was kind of like, oh, I'm a hockey player, which is amazing, but what do I do with kind of the free time,
Yeah.
And I've always enjoyed education. I really enjoyed school, enjoyed my A levels. That was, one of the, best few years I've had with all my friends, obviously, because we were in Swindon playing hockey together. Very unique experience. And I didn't really want to just not do anything. So, I basically ordered on Amazon loads of different books and, all different stuff, was doing a few online courses and stuff. And I kind of just gravitated towards that, kind of left alone what I didn't like, and then just carried on with what I did. And that book's kind of like the foundation of everything I've, picked up since then. So, yeah.
What is it about it that you find so interesting? Because we were talking very briefly before we hit record on this, that kind of the level of financial literacy for certain generations of people in Britain, it's not generally very high. It's kind of something that you're expected to learn as you go along, but people don't really give you a helping hand. But I mean, I rewatched a couple of your YouTube videos in preparation for this, and I think I must have been hit with about 6 or 7 different financial trading apps of ways to trade stocks, buy crypto, and we're kind of being bombarded with everything from kind of all sides. But you've gone that step further, have finding something you enjoy and running with it. Obviously, something we can both kind of, most of the listeners will kind of sympathize with. But this is not an area that a lot of people would kind of associate with professional athletes. If anything, professional athletes sometimes have a bit of maybe an unfair reputation for not being very good with their money.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess how it all started for me was, like I said, obviously that reading that book, and the kind of what he was saying within the book resonated with me, and everyone's different. So, to put it really like simply, in the investing world, you can either have people that everyone has a different style of how they want to like invest their money. So you might be like a value investor, which means, you're going out and you're looking at all the different metrics, and you're trying to find companies that you think are undervalued and you want to invest in them. And I never really thought that way. I thought I want to find ones that are growing really fast, and because typically they will outperform other companies in the stock market. So my kind of thinking was, oh, I'm going to go towards that, and that's exactly what that's his model basically. So then, I thought, well, I've read this one book. I really think I understand it. I'm going to go and see anything else that he's done. So then he, did an extended version. So I got that, and then it all kind of slowly but surely was piecing together. And then I was looking around in the UK, and I was like, there's nothing really here. Like, I've never learned this at school. No one at school said, oh, I would recommend that you get your own pension when you're young or anything like that. There was, like you said, there's no real information out there. And then I was doing some research in, obviously, about American, the typical investments in America. You invest from really young, and it's kind of like in their culture that you're putting into like a Roth IRA or something like that. And over here, all we really have is like, you go to work, you can have a pension, and you hope that when you retire, that is enough. And like, that's all I could really find. And for me, there was this burning desire of like, I need more, like there needs to be more kind of fuel in the fire for me to actually want to do this. And I've just heard a few stories about people's pensions that I was just like, I need to be different. Like, I need to, want more. It's not just about money, but almost like the mental stimulation of like, I think I can do better than this. And I think that's because I'm an athlete. You have that
I was just about to ask about this as to where that competitive nature comes into this.
Yeah. So it started to really tick away at me of like, I think I can really do this. And then obviously doesn't detract from anything I'm doing in sport, but it's also good to have an outlet, I think. And then I started looking at like average. I really got into the numbers of it, and I was looking at like average returns of pensions, and then they weren't actually beating the general stock market anyway. So then I was thinking like, people are paying pension fund managers a percentage of what they're putting in each month, and they're actually doing worse off than if they just did it themselves. And I was like, hold on a minute, our system is kind of, I would never say like the system is broken, but it just seems like we're just not like literate towards it. We never taught anything. And then I kind of thought, well, if I'm just going to keep this to myself, then maybe I should start talking about it, which is kind of why I'm doing the videos. But I just think there's not a lot out there in this country for why people should invest in general on their own. And I think it's kind of, quite strange, honestly, that we don't do anything about it in school. Pension funds are solely focused on investing in the market. That's how they work. They invest in stocks and bonds. That's kind of the breakdown. And in the US, it's very culturally normal for people to go out and invest their own money. And typically in the UK, we just don't have that kind of risk attitude. Of course, it's risky like anything. But, I think that's where we're kind of under, like, kind of not left behind, but when people come to retire, they're hoping they've got this nice big nest egg, and actually it's underperformed even just a general stock market, which to me is just strange when they're supposed to be professionals.
The thing that occurs to me, and this is more of a personal kind of cultural observation maybe about the two different countries, is that I once heard that America as a country is a teenager, and Britain as a country is a pensioner. And actually it's that more older societal attitude maybe that Britain has makes people less risk averse, because as a nation we come from a history of larger fluctuations, and now because the country is much more of a kind of a formed entity, that people are less inclined to be that risky. Whereas actually America, because it is still comparatively a much younger nation and was built off of effectively people walking off into the wilderness, and not always in the nicest possible way, claiming what they found. And potentially that's why maybe America is kind of like that. But I think the counter to that will be is that that Americans potentially, in the sort of the attitude in North America, is much more of a do first, think later, and that can equally shoot yourself in the foot, and it thereby comes the risk nature of what you're interested in.
Sure, 100%, and I think that's kind of what it all boils down to, right? Is everyone, like I said earlier, I have my own style, my own strategy, and there won't be one person in the world that's the same as me, because everyone's different. Everyone approaches kind of risk with their own money differently, and you have to, it takes a while. This is what I didn't realize. It takes a while for you to really find like what works for you, and then you have to kind of harness that and build everything upon your style, your personality, your kind of strategy that you have. And it's kind of like anything in your profession. You'll find what works and find what doesn't, but everyone's kind of different in the way they do things. So no, I completely agree with what you said about kind of the differences in the countries, for sure. I just hope people kind of do the research in the money that they're putting away for the future, and are happy with obviously what that's projected to give them. And there's loads of products out there that can help you with that too, and loads of obviously very talented people that do it for a living. I'm just out here trying to learn myself and put some stuff out along the way. There's a lot more educated people than me, for sure.
You play a sport where players will have an individual style, and that's something that kind of gets built on over time. Obviously, with what you're doing with your interest in the markets and stuff, that will have taken time to build for you as well. Was there a moment where you kind of realized to yourself that you'd kind of found what your style was? I appreciate there's probably no great Archimedes in the bath eureka moment to that, but has there been a point where you were mid-trade and you suddenly thought to yourself, oh, well, this is, I'm in my kind of flow state of what I'm doing now, this is how I want to do things?
Yeah, I think there probably hasn't been one specific moment, but one big moment was during obviously COVID, when right, the initial kind of onset of it in February of 2020. I was still obviously very inexperienced then, but watching that in real time, the market was coming down, like, one day was like down 7%, then the next day was like down 8%. And we're talking like just the stock market in general. We haven't even spoken about individual companies that can fall up to 3-4 times as much. And to see that in real time, I honestly thought, like, if all of my money was in the market right now and my personality was just to sit there and leave it, I don't know how I would feel, because obviously, like, every day no one knew what was going to happen, and there was obviously restrictions every day, and the numbers were coming out each day. They were worse and worse and worse, and that's when I realized, like, I need to kind of really look at like my risk management rules and just think, like, how would I feel if my money was in there? And that's when I kind of went back to the foundation and kind of started building rules for me, because I couldn't sustain like a decline like that. My kind of style would be to make a little bit when the times are good, sidestep all the bad times, because it gets super volatile and my personality just can't handle watching my account go up and down huge in one day. I think it's just when you do it with, I guess, enough of your own money, you feel the emotion. I mean, it's the ultimate test of your personality. Like, it's your own money that you've worked hard for, that you're putting at risk. So I think COVID was really just a crazy time in the investment world, because you were seeing just such volatile moves every day. But it taught me the rules that I have now, and I wouldn't have wanted to miss that, if that makes sense, because I obviously experienced that. You can use that moving forward.
The nature of finding something positive in some wider adversity there is obviously a good lesson for all of us. One thing I'm interested that you mentioned there, and I think it's it leads me to two thoughts. The first thought is that the nature of emotion that kind of goes into this as well, because I think when people think about business, people think about business, I think, in kind of the same way that people think a lot about politics, and it's kind of this very detached thing that has an impact on people, but it's very, very easy to kind of arm's length. And actually, particularly as well, if you're investing your own money in these bits and pieces, and not just kind of sticking a couple of sticking a grand in an ISA and kind of reaping the returns kind of thing, but you're actually actively following what the stock markets are doing, what individual companies are doing. It's almost like sort of surfing on spreadsheets a little bit. But it's much more than a faceless thing. There is an art to the science almost.
Sure. And with every decision is obviously risk that's on the table. And like I said earlier, it's your hard-earned money at the end of the day, and no one should risk more than they are willing to, of course. And like I said, everyone's different with that. But yeah, like you said, it's the ultimate test, because you're watching it's every move, because again, that's not my style. I don't want to sit at the computer all day, because I just don't want to. But it can be tough, like when your rules are saying to do one thing, and then you're looking at your account and then it's saying, are you sure that's a good idea? Like you have to, you've got your head in your heart almost. So you learn over time, and it's all experience, and I'm definitely still have a lot to learn, but it is the ultimate test for sure.
Going back to the second thought I was having, and allow me to play devil's advocate for a moment here. How is this any different than going down the bookies and sticking a grand on the horses?
That's a binary outcome, right? So you've got 0, I guess, you lose, or you've got whatever the potential winning. I think the natural tendency of the stock market is obviously up over the years, and that's because constantly trying to innovate, constantly becoming more efficient, and companies are constantly growing. I suppose the difference with me is that I'm trying to put my money into those that are growing, say, the fastest, or those that are showing the tendencies that you can research over time that typically lead to positive performance. But with my kind of style and strategy, is never an all or nothing decision. So I would only risk a tiny portion of my account for each idea that I have. So if I got 10 ideas in a row and they all were wrong, there would be an associate amount of risk that I'm taking on my whole account. And it wouldn't be, oh, I was wrong 10 times in a row, now I'm out. Like now I've got nothing left to play with. It's always a proportionate amount of risk on the whole account that I have. And that way, over time, because time's really important in obviously the investing world, over time, there's going to be opportunities when it works out. And obviously, it's a really good time to get in the market. And then there's going to be times when you're just not at it and you're not obviously doing very well. And that's the time where you want to play light and obviously sidestep any kind of volatility or anything like that. So great question, because people often think, well, you're either right or you're wrong, right? And that's it.
The shades of grey in things. What a shocking surprise this is, Jordan. I can't believe it. She comes from the world of British ice hockey.
Yeah. And you always have to, like I said earlier, you need the rules in place to, a lot of what I see online, and like you said earlier, you get all the adverts and stuff, right? It's like, oh, buy crypto here and invest here. And it's all, when you see a lot of people talking about it online, it's all very binary. It's, I'm invested in this and hopefully it works. And there's no like, if I'm wrong here, I'm going to get out and then maybe I'll reconsider. It's always, what I see anyway, is always like very, 100% in or 100% out. Whereas mine is, I'm constantly kind of looking at everything, and you just kind of like a dimmer switch. You put on the gas when it's good, retract when it's not so good, and you kind of test the market and see, is this a good time or not? And when it is, you kind of go for it. And when it's not, you just back away. And that's probably a really convoluted way of answering that question, but
I think I think it's an interesting thing as well, because the big thing, and certainly one of the things that Banners on the Wall as a website that I've tried to develop over the nearly 15 years is looking in that shades of grey, because ice hockey as a sport is very all or nothing. You know, guys are expected to go in and put in 100% every shift, and actually sometimes working smart is better than working hard on occasions. You can't go full bore the entire time, or you know, everybody be retired at 30 with their hip flexors in like 6 or 7 pieces. But there's something to be said for looking at. And I asked the gambling question because I think certainly the thing is, it is in some ways, I think a lot of people would see it as micro gambling, in the sense that, you know, you think about some of the things that are offered today in betting from bookmakers and stuff. You can put a bet, you can cash out early, you can bet on small amounts, and all of these different things. People putting on things like you know, like accumulators and bits and pieces like that. Now, I'm not a person who gambles in that sense. I don't find it interesting, and maybe it's, but I do have a stocks and shares ISA that I invest into, and I wonder whether it's because, like you mentioned, gambling can be a very all or nothing game. Now, I'm aware one of my readers makes a complete living off of gambling in a very strategic way with a system that leads them to that. What would you, if some, what I think some people will kind of struggle to maybe potentially to see the difference, because all businesses is just people, like, it's just people in fancy suits doing something, as opposed to somebody in their jeans and trainers in, you know, Ladbrokes or William Hill. Other bookmakers are available.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, you know, there are, you know, extremely well qualified professionals that are doing this for a living, just as I'm sure there are professional sports makers and obviously bettors, of course. But what I would say is a lot of money flows into kind of the markets and things like that. There's a reason these, you know, there's the ultimate reason companies come public is to obviously raise capital for them to continue to expand, and I don't see that going away.
You heard it here first. Jordan Kelsall says capitalism is not about to collapse.
Yeah, no, and it's a constant driver, right? You know, it's never going to stop. And you know, I guess when you look around and you see all the development of AI and things like that, it's probably good to have a job that has a human element to it, because again, you won't find a trading strategy with AI that will, you know, return you 100% of the time. Everything in the markets is broken into the human element, although there is obviously algorithms and stuff at play. And you know, I guess it's just how you kind of approach things in life, and you kind of, I guess, your outlook on obviously putting money into the markets like you obviously do and invest. And you know, a lot of pension funds, like I said earlier, are you know, built around both sides of the coin. You know, they've got companies that are paying a premium for bonds, and then they invest in the stock as well. So that's kind of how the foundation is laid there, and I don't see it going away. And I think it's a real opportunity if people want to do some research into financial markets. I think you know, there's a lot there to be had.
What one less, because if you take your hockey side of your life and you take this hobby that you have away from hockey, what influence has each side had on the other, do you think?
I would say the hockey side has definitely given me like constantly striving to be better, right? Obviously, as a hockey player, you know, you constantly want to be faster, you constantly want to be stronger, and you know, better skills on the ice and stuff. And I think that kind of determination has led into the other side. And then I guess from kind of the hobbies that I've had, it just makes me realize how lucky I am to kind of do what I do day to day. You know, I'm not talking about investments or anything like that. I'm talking just being a professional hockey player, because people put a lot of basically, well, all, you know, time and effort into becoming a doctor or whatever their profession they want to be. And I'm lucky that I've done it with what was originally a hobby for me. So would never change that. But there's definitely kind of crossovers between the two. Like I said earlier, kind of the determination to always want to be better and learn more, I guess, and the consistency in kind of showing up every day and putting in some work to get further along the line of where you want to be. It's taught me a lot for sure.
We'll take How to Make Money in Stocks and put it to one side. You're not allowed to choose that, nor can you choose the extended edition. Sorry. The best book you've read on the investing topic outside of the stuff that William O'Neill has obviously taught you?
I would say Reminiscences of a Stock Operator by the author of the book is called Edwin Lefebvre, but people were pretty sure it was Jesse Livermore who actually wrote that before he committed suicide. Just a crazy kind of, I guess, depiction of his life. He was kind of a boom and bust trader back in I think it was the 30s, I believe. Just amazing read. Because you had to put it in the lens of like, you think he's written it, but he apparently hasn't written it. Someone's written it for him. And kind of the stuff that he's talking about of, highly educated over almost 100 years ago, in the Great Depression era and things like that. And the amount he knew, which is still in the market today, is absolutely incredible. And it just shows that times in the market sometimes don't really change. There's a lot of underlying things going on there. But yeah, really good read.
How often are the boys in the room asking you for financial advice that you definitely do not give them?
Do you know what? It's just not my style. I kind of just, I don't talk about it really. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just not really my style. I do what I do on here and the videos I put out, but not really, to be honest. Obviously a few close friends, of course, but no, it's not really my style, and that's why doing the YouTube is so out of my comfort zone, because it's really just not my personality to be out there. I don't really have the confidence, to be quite honest, to sit there and put it all out, but I'm trying. So that's the main thing.
So sorry, folks, we're not getting investing tips on Lucas Sheldon's podcast. How good an investment is a signed Jordan Kelsall Nottingham Panthers trading card?
I'll leave that to you.
Sitting on the fence, like all good people involved in business. Just heading back to the hockey, as we probably should do, just to kind of round things out here. Like I say, busy weekend, game on Friday, sort of game on Saturday. How are the team looking going into this weekend? Because that's you're coming off a Belfast side that's had a pretty tough sort of start. Obviously, people would have expected them to kind of sweep through the Challenge Cup group like they had done in the past, and Dundee have decided to just be a pain in their backside. They obviously lost in Guildford on Sunday as well. They're a Giants team that's hurting at the moment, and they have the quality in there that can really do some damage this weekend when they roll into the NIC.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're always a great team. I've played them a lot over the years, and I'm sure it'll be the same on Friday. I think it's a good opportunity for us, being at home twice this weekend, to really kind of, put our mark down on the league. But it won't be easy. Like I said, every game against them is a tough battle, and I've been looking at their lineup. They've got enough ability there to really do some damage in the league. So we need to be ready for sure. And that, we're not overlooking kind of Coventry either. We play them on Wednesday, and they played a great game. So they'll both be difficult games, but we just need to be focused on us and be ready.
Coventry as well certainly feel like it's really hard to know what you're getting at the moment with them, because they sort of came racing out of the gate. Of course, they've directly qualified for the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup, but it feels like they've hit a bit of a wall offensively recently. But of course, the big problem is that man between the pipes, Matt Robson, has a horrible tendency of stealing everything from everybody everywhere, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a really good goalie. I think you saw that on Wednesday, just in one little depiction. We put, I don't know how many shots on him, but just played a great game, and it was tough to kind of break them down. And they stuck in there, and it went to overtime, which we really were pushing for that one, obviously, to get automatically through in the Challenge Cup, but thankfully we did it in overtime. Oh, well, shootout, I should say. But yeah, no, difficult game again. They're always, Kevin's done a great job putting them together again, and it'll always be a tough game, whether it's at home or in Coventry. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yet to score a goal this season. Is this weekend the weekend, do you reckon?
I hope so. Be nice. Be nice at home for sure. Yeah, just focusing on what my job is, and as a line, I think into the weekend we've got opportunity to match up against some really good players, and just continue to do what we're relied upon, and do my job as best I can.
A massive thanks for taking the time to speak to me about this. Like I said, it is a different world. I think that a lot of people sometimes professionally might be interested in, but personally may feel sort of a little beyond them, because it is something that does take it takes investment of time as well as money to kind of get into, which I suppose leaves me with one question. Are you the only person in British hockey currently reading the Financial Times?
This is going to sound crazy when I say this. I actually typically don't read any financial news outlets.
Now that I find very interesting. You strike me as somebody who, because you talk so much about doing your research, I find that interesting. Is it because you're mostly investing in stocks kind of in sort of North American markets rather than here?
Yeah, correct. I mean, I do keep obviously tabs on the news and things like that, but I don't really need the news flow to kind of guide me where to go. I kind of use the charts that I look at and things like that to kind of lead the way. I think the funny thing with news is it never seems to be good. Seriously, if you sit down and watch the news, it never really seems to be that kind of uplifting or good. And I think typically in the market, especially when the news gets the worst it's been, that's usually a sign of things might be changing here. And often that was often the case, especially in COVID, like I said earlier, when the news was terrible, there was, hundreds of thousands of cases every day. That's when the market hit the floor and started to turn up again. So it's weird how it works, but typically try and stay away from news flow.
As somebody who reads the news in 2 languages every day, I can't sympathise with that argument. It should be said either way. This upcoming Friday, the Nottingham Panthers are at home to the Belfast Giants, and then on Saturday they are at home to the Coventry Blaze at the Motorpoint Arena, both at 7 p.m. face-offs, where you can find Jordan Kelsall, hopefully front and centre in the action. Worth an investment, ladies and gentlemen, in your time and your money. Jordan, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.